following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, the 25th of May, 2016, are currently trading with gold at $1,224.24 an ounce, silver $16.29 an ounce, Texas crude $48.62 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 449 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1961, John F. Kennedy announces the U.S. government's goal of putting a man on the moon before the end of the decade, though many point out that a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, with NASA essentially staging the whole thing. John F. Kennedy announced a plan for America to aim for the moon. Today in history. In recent news, Hillary Clinton, former head of the State Department and current Democratic presidential frontrunner, was highly criticized in a report released today by the State Department's independent investigator, stating that her email practices while running the department were not the smartest. It states that her use of private email for public business was not an appropriate method of preserving documents, concluding that her practices failed to comply with the department's policies meant to ensure that federal record laws were followed. Apparently, a better option would have been for her to have printed and saved her emails during the 4 years in office and immediately comply with turning in her work-related correspondence upon stepping down in February of 2013, instead of sitting on those records nearly 2 years. If this isn't bad enough, the report noted that a top Clinton aide was warned in 2010 that the system may not be properly preserving records, but they dismissed those worries, indicating that the system passed legal requirements, even though the inspection general uncovered that it could not show evidence of a review by any legal counsel whatsoever. Keep in mind that this independent State Department investigation released this report in the midst of the current FBI investigation into whether Clinton mishandled classified material through her use of a private server in her New York home. Texas is set to become the first state to sue the Obama administration over the new federal guidance for transgender students in public schools. Governor Greg Abbott tweeted today that Texas will sue, quote, to stop Obama's transgender directive to schools. The message from his personal Twitter account came hours before a scheduled news conference by State Attorney General Ken Paxton. Several states have vowed defiance since federal officials this month told U.S. public schools to let transgender students use bathrooms and locker rooms to match their gender identity. The Lone Star Lowdown is currently looking for sponsors. If you have a product or a service you'd like to advertise with us, feel free to give me a call at 210-363-2257. This has been Rick Rohde with your Lowdown for May 25th, 2016.
Good friends, good evening and welcome here on this Thursday evening, the 26th of May, just about the end of May, heading into June 2016. This is a live broadcast of INN World Report Radio on the Great Logos Radio Network, where we come to you from Brooklyn, New York, I should add, on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights from 6 until 8 p.m. Central Time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being you, for listening to this program, for fighting the good fight, for educating yourself and yourselves and your families and your friends, and trying to get a better understanding about how things work in this world. And we try to help that process out. That's what we're all about here at INN World Report Radio, as well as so many other great and dedicated people in what has been called the alternative media, although it's becoming much more mainstream, I think. But we could talk about that. I do not have a guest scheduled tonight, so it's going to be open phones for the entire show, 512-646-1984. So there you have it. In the next 2 hours, it'll be open phone lines. I hope to hear from you all, and it's your show. We'll have a board meeting, pull up a chair, how we doing, and whatever you'd like to talk about. Open topics as well as open phones. And it's because if you're listening to this program, this network, then you're already somebody who's thinking about things, and I'm sure whatever is on your mind would be of interest to the rest of us. There you have it, 512-646-1984. You can get right in. Lots to talk about, as always. Donald Trump, it seems, has wrapped up now the Republican nomination. He's got the 1,200 and some odd delegates that he needs. There's no question anymore about the validity of his candidacy, at least as far as the delegate count goes. And it looks to me like the mainstream Republicans, most of them, or many of them, who had been fighting so hard against him, and I'd like to talk about why they were, in my opinion, but most of them have sort of surrendered, thrown in the towel, and they're starting to get used to the fact that this is the way it's going to be. Now, there's a lot of holdouts, a lot of dead-enders, as they said about the Iraqi army, I think. And we could talk about those people too. But there's a markedly different tone from the Republican Party about Trump since he mopped the floor with everybody else and got rid of Ted Cruz and John Kasich at the end there. Conversely, on the Democratic Party side, it's a big embarrassment. Hillary Clinton still can't close the deal. Republican voter turnout has been really, really big, double, I think, in many cases what it had been in the primaries previously. Whereas on the Democratic side, it's been, despite Bernie Sanders, it's been down 20, 30% in some states, as I understand it. And that's because I can't tell you how many people I talk to. And I'm in Brooklyn. There are a lot of liberals out here. And, they just don't like Hillary. They just don't like Hillary. And some of it may be because they're not really thinking people and they just rely on what they hear. And there's been, let's face it, an awful lot of propaganda against Hillary Clinton. But at the same time, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. And Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, for that matter, her husband too, have done an awful lot of unsavory things. And, so I think much of the criticism is at this point well-deserved, especially since she went on to become Secretary of State. She's got that record now, and she can't walk away from that. And it's just absolutely abysmal what she did as the Secretary of State. I think it probably, in some cases, even against her boss, President Obama. But anyhow, we could talk about that. 512-646-1984. We can talk about some other things if you'd like as well. We had the Left Forum here in New York City last weekend, and I attended several sessions, two of which were featuring Dr. Webster Tarpley. And, he's been very vociferous against Donald Trump. And some of us challenged Dr. Tarpley and asked him, well, what if that means getting Hillary Clinton elected if Trump is blocked? And he said anybody but Trump. So, this, I think, highlights the sort of strangeness of this particular election. The outsiders, Sanders and Trump, are getting all of the attention. In the Republican Party's case, they got all the votes, or the majority of the votes, the votes that were needed. And established people on the right and the left in many cases, are having a hard time. They're having a hard time, and none more fascinatingly so, if you ask me, than the media itself. Because these jerks, and I call them jerks because I think many of them are sellouts. The rest are not very bright. They don't know how to handle Donald Trump's popularity or Bernie Sanders. The talk, by the way, among the older liberal class, and I just heard some yesterday in the park here in Brooklyn. I volunteer on 1 day a week in the mornings to work in my local neighborhood park to help do gardening there and stuff. I'm pretty good at gardening, and they love having me over there. And, you hear a lot of scuttlebutt. And there's these, 40, 50-something-year-old ladies working with me, and they're all talking about, when's Bernie going to just do the right thing and drop out? Well, yeah, he's embarrassing Hillary Clinton. She can't close the deal. So instead of saying Hillary's a flawed candidate who can't close the deal, it's like business as usual, as it's been done for the last couple of decades. You put a flawed candidate up there, and you control the discussion so that their flaws are not an issue. That's what we've been having. But that's why Donald Trump has been so successful. He doesn't play that game. He hits hard and he hits direct. He doesn't pull his punches. So this whole fabric of lies that we're enveloped in depends on everybody being in on the lies, in on the fixed fight. All right. If you think about the election, and particularly the primaries, as being a prize fight or a round robin, where you have several fighters and you're going to, fight it down. What do they call it? March Madness with the basketball tournament. You don't have to have good fighters if they're all in on the fix. and it's predetermined who the winner's going to be. And that's what you have. So they don't really go for the jugular. Bernie Sanders certainly hasn't. I mean, he's kind of making a little more noise nowadays, but, Hillary Clinton's got tremendous flaws. And you saw it happening with Donald Trump. He's on stage there, and he's looking right at George Bush's brother, Jeb, and he said the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was a lie. And your brother and his administration knew it was a lie. Holy mackerel. Now, what Donald Trump said is absolutely true, but in the fixed fight, in the fixed world, in the rigged system world that we live in, such truths are not allowed to be said. If you want to get a paycheck, if you want to be in the party, if you want to stay in office, if you want to sit in your anchor seat on the nightly news, you can't speak that kind of truth. And half of these idiots don't even know the truth about it anyway, right? But, 1 week later, I think, Jeb Bush was gone. Bang. Gone. 1 week later. Okay? And they spent millions against Trump, especially in Florida. Didn't work. It just seemed to make people more angry. They don't know how to handle it. They've stretched this fabric of lie over our society for so long and so far now that, once you've told that many lies, that's the only thing you can do is keep lying. Somebody comes along, starts telling the truth, and it knocks the whole house of cards down. That's what we've got going on. Well, what about the media? Donald Trump conspiracy theories talking about the weapons of mass destruction. George F. Will, he's like this, grand dame of the talking heads class on TV, and he's supposed to be a Republican and a conservative and a paleo conservative or a traditional conservative or whatever you want to call it, cloth coat conservative, rock cut conservative. And he's talking about, how Trump lied about the lie. No, George, you're covering your own butt. You're supposed to be so in the know. You didn't protect the American people with your columns and your TV shows by in real time saying, like INN did, like Scott Ritter told everybody, warned everybody, this was a lie. Little old INN, no budget. And we told our national audience on television the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was a lie. There will be none found before the invasion happened. How did we get that right? We asked Scott Ritter, the man who took them out. Scott Ritter, who you've heard on this program the last few weeks, we'll have him back on. He's a resident. He's a fellow New York State resident like I am, okay? He's from the Albany area, a little further upstate, up the Hudson River. Hillary Clinton is also, at the time, was also his senator as well as mine, okay? So he wants to get an audience, briefly, to meet with our senator, Hillary Clinton, to warn her that the weapons of mass destruction of Iraq is a lie. There are none. I cleared the country out. He got in touch with her people. They knew who he was. They knew what he was going to come and tell her. And she blew him off. She didn't speak with him. She didn't want to speak with him, because if she did, then it would have been on the record that she knew the truth. And she wanted to be able to vote for war, which she did. And Scott Ritter would have gotten in the way of that. So that's another thing about Hillary Clinton that many of us find distasteful. And you heard that right here on INN World Report Radio. Go back in the archives about 3-4 weeks ago when we had Scott Ritter on. We'll have him on again. He tried to tell Hillary Clinton there was no weapons of mass destruction. His senator, my senator at the time. And she would not give him an audience. And she knew he was knocking on the door. Her staff told her. Her staff told her what he wanted to see her about. And she did not want to hear it. Because, after all, war making is good business, especially if you're a politician who wants to be president someday. And that's what Hillary was all about. Tom Kiley, INN. We'll be right back just after this.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Baby ambassador to England or France, may like to gamble, might like to dance, maybe the heavyweight champion of the world, but you got to serve somebody.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley here, INN World Report Radio, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights here on the Great Logos Radio Network. Give us a call, 512-646-1984. Phone lines will be open all night tonight. And I don't think I could talk straight through, so I'm going to be relying on some of y'all to give us a ring, 512-646-1984. A lot to talk about. I was just talking about the rigged nature of our elections. And I was talking about how the candidates, and it's not just the candidates, it's the fabric of lies, I'll call it. It's not just the politicians, not just the political candidates, also the press. They can only go so far. They go far enough to make it look like they're really fighting for you and trying to inform you about this and that. So, of course, there's certain subjects and topics that they don't have any restrictions on. You want to review movies or, do recipes or, even talk about safe history. That's fine. But there's so much of it that's just lies, and they don't even do any reporting anymore. Morley Safer, rest his soul, he just passed away last weekend, I think, or, maybe it was a week ago already now. This guy was a real journalist back in Vietnam. And, he was, I think it was his story where, he exposed GIs, American GIs, setting a Vietnamese hamlet on fire, even though they were loyal to the South Vietnamese government. And there was no indication whatsoever that the Viet Cong were operating out of that village. And the famous expression that may be attributed to him, we had to burn the village in order to save it. And Safer reported that story. That's an atrocity. It's a war crime. He reported it. And Lyndon Johnson went nuts and complained to CBS and said that Morley Safer had blanked on the American flag. And what the blank means is, eliminated his waste on the American flag, solid waste. Okay, I don't want to get too graphic, but that's what the President of the United States said to characterize the reportage of a real reporter, Morley Safer, who went out in the field, not with press pools, to shut reporters up so that they didn't have to have any reporters like Morley Safer anymore, starting with Reagan's macho invasion of Grenada, okay, which was a totally bogus, no threat to the United States whatsoever, the tiny island nation of Grenada. But, Ronald Reagan ran on a theme of morning in America. America was going to wake up and start to feel better about itself again. All right. And why on earth did America need to wake up and start feeling better about itself? This was at his, at the Republican convention when he, second time around, he lost the first time, second time around to Gerald Ford. He won the second time around. And they had this, movie that they played there. And it was all American flags blowing in slow motion and the sun coming up and the lawnmowers mowing the grass and everything. It was morning in America. It's a new day with Ronald Reagan. And what was that all about? Because we were going to wake ourselves up and get out of bed and get out of the depression that was caused by Vietnam. The malaise, the Vietnam malaise that the country had supposedly been suffering from. All right. Well, where did that come from? It came from Wall Street and American oligarchs who insisted on invading that poor country that was absolutely no threat to us. That's a long story, but basically we created a phony country out of the southern half of that country, and the people in that country rebelled and said, no, we're one country and no thank you. And we created a phony baloney government in the South and called it South Vietnam. There's still people who talk to this day about South Vietnam as if it was a real country, and it wasn't. So, we should feel bad about that sort of thing. We should feel bad when our oligarchy is out of control and causes wars and death and destruction. In the case of Vietnam, millions of Vietnamese perishing, millions, and the numbers I've seen range from 3 to 6 million in a country of 39 million at the time, I believe it was. It's a lot of people. Civilians, military. And we created a civil war. Those are the worst kinds of wars. We created one. We paid, one side to fight. And they didn't want to fight. The Vietnamese didn't want to fight their brothers. And the communists were the actual patriots who were defending their country, trying to throw foreign domination out. And the phony baloney country that we set up in the South couldn't defend itself. It couldn't defeat the patriotic Vietnamese, in their eyes, to their own country, the most powerful military on earth for almost a decade. Bombing, way more bombing than when it happened during the Second World War. Couldn't defeat them. And then when we finally pulled out, the ARVNs, they called them, the Army of the Vietnamese Republic or something like that, they didn't last very long because they were basically mercenaries and traitors to their own people, if you ask me. And finally, I guess 1975 or so, the Vietnamese reconquered the southern part of their own country. And the famous pictures of the helicopter evacuation of the people climbing up on top of the embassy in Saigon and trying to get on the helicopters. And, in order to make room for the people on the aircraft carriers and stuff, they ended up ditching some of the helicopters. Famous footage. Well, a lot of those people climbing up the top were traitors. They worked with foreigners against their own people. And of course they wanted to get out because the people who, their native brothers and sisters who didn't want foreign domination were going to be pretty angry with them. But, of course we shouldn't have been there in the first place, but we were, and millions died. And instead of looking at that question honestly, instead of going into the soul of our country and finding out why is it, how could this be that we could carry out such terrible stuff? No. Go to sleep. Take a pill. Get high. Here's some Soma. Go to sleep and let's wake up and forget it all happened. And we'll have morning in America. That's what Ronald Reagan did when he came to town. No more. We're not going to feel bad about Vietnam anymore, although, there was plenty to feel bad about. We're going to start fresh. Okay, so a lot of people wanted to go for that. A lot of people didn't understand Vietnam anyway. And Ronald Reagan dipped our toe back into the waters of military action by invading this small country of Grenada in the Caribbean. And they learned their lesson from Vietnam. There were some big lessons that were learned in Vietnam. One of them is that when you have to draft people into the military to do terrible acts of war like this that have nothing to do with defending our country, you're going to have problems. And they did. And I was in the Army at the end of the Vietnam War, and I can tell you the draftees in the Army were very, very different than the volunteers who were there. And so at the end of the Vietnam War, they ended the draft. In the last couple of years of that war, there were no draftees. The last year or so, toward the end of my service, the last year, there were absolutely no draftees left. It was a totally different Army. The Army's attitude was, hey, now you asked to be here. So now, it's all different. And guess what? Guess what they did with the last draftees left? Guess what the Army did? It instituted urinalysis. They started to check everybody's urine to see if you were getting high after the last draftee left. Isn't that funny? What timing, huh? So they recognized, let's end the draft. So now wars in the future, nobody will have anything to complain about. Hey, you volunteers, shut up. And so that was the first thing they did. The next thing they did, they tested it out with this invasion of Grenada. A little country certainly couldn't defend itself, certainly wasn't a threat to us. And they wanted to make sure that there would be no more Morley Safers in the future, no more reporters who were telling you the truth. So they instituted this concept of the press pool. The reporters were controlled by the very military they were supposed to be reporting on. That happened with Ronald Reagan in Grenada, and it's been going ever since. Now you get these jackasses in the press, like this guy. Who's this guy from NBC that thought he was under fire and he wasn't? He reported that he was under fire, and a few other things. What do you get instead now? Now you get, oh, thank goodness these brave soldiers were here to protect me. You know what? Morley Safer didn't need brave soldiers. They got a Jeep. They went out on their own. And that's exactly what Ronald Reagan didn't want happening anymore. Soldiers going out, reporters going out on their own and telling the real story. And we really haven't had that ever since. Who's that guy from NBC? 512-646-1984. Give us a call.
Please scan your next item. That annoying mechanical voice from the self-checkout lane may soon be silenced for good. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll have great news on the death of computerized cashiers next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Apparently, I'm not the only one who hates the self-serve check stands at stores. After a decade of trying them, retailers are finally acknowledging studies that say shoppers would rather dodge the self-serve lane and head for a human cashier. Today, just 16% of grocery store transactions go through self-checkout lanes. That's down from a high of 22% 3 years ago. Shoppers say they're more satisfied when they pay people, not cold computers. In response, grocery chains like Big Y and Albertsons plan to bag the do-it-yourself option and bring back customer service. Hooray! Now, if only they dump the purchase tracking membership cards. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Welcome back, Tom Caliana, World Report Radio. I'm happy to talk today because I don't have a guest for you, unfortunately, but you're not calling in. Give me a call, 512-646-1984. Challenge me. Am I saying anything that sounds screwy to you? I know a lot of you hold Ronald Reagan in high esteem, and, certainly there's many things that he deserves credit for, working with the Russians to, end the Cold War, which he made significant strides toward, nuclear non-proliferation, that sort of thing. And, I think Ronald Reagan was a lot more of a nationalist than anybody since, and we could certainly use that. Donald Trump is talking about that, by the way. But he had a lot of faults, or at least the people that he allowed to run things did. Iran-Contra, one of them. But we could talk about it. 512-646-1984. I'm talking about Morning in America. I'm talking about the invasion of Grenada. I'm talking about how we used to have much better reporting than we have now, when the reporters roamed the battlefield themselves to find out what was really going on. And Ronald Reagan put a stop to that with the press pool system. And they actually... I think one of the CNN guys, somebody actually tried to get to Grenada on his own, a reporter. He didn't want to have anything to do with this press pool stuff. They had to wait until the military drove him onto the beach and all of that stuff. And I'm sure they weren't going to be allowed to drive him onto the beach until after they sanitized the scene and made it look the way they wanted the reporters to see. But I do remember reports of that invasion where one reporter at least said, it might have been Peter Arnett from CNN, I'm not sure, but one reporter at least said, screw this, I have a job. I have an obligation to my readers. I'm going to get there myself. And I'm told the U.S. Navy actually fired on his boat to try to turn him around, try to keep him from going there without being in a press pool. But anyway, that's what you used to have. That's what you have now. But you used to have the Morley Safers who went and reported stuff the government didn't want. They didn't want it reported because fundamentally, I think people are decent and they're good, especially in our country. And that goodness, that fundamental goodness, has to be overcome. Okay, I'm sure that the majority of the Iraqi people are like the majority of the American people, and like the majority of the German people who I've met, even though we had a war with them, or the majority of the Russian people, many of whom I've met, some of whom I've worked with, some of whom I've hired to work for me, and so many other places are decent people. They're good people. All right? And there's no reason to go and kill them by the millions, as was done in Vietnam, as has been being done in Iraq. So your goodness, the goodness of the American people, needs to be overcome. It is an obstacle. It is an object to be abandoned, to be overcome for the warmongers. So they have to tell you lies to overcome your innate goodness. You need to be given a lie, an excuse, which you will then go along with and say, well, okay, hey, look, if they attacked us or if they have weapons of mass destruction and they're threatening the world, I guess, as distasteful as it might be, we should send in the Marines, right? Or the lie that got us into the full Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where we were told small, little, tiny Vietnamese torpedo boats, the news would have reported them as North Vietnamese torpedo boats, but really there was, in truth, no such thing as a North Vietnamese and a South Vietnamese at the time, ever, I think. But these torpedo boats fired on the most powerful navy on Earth, supposedly, while we were doing maneuvers or something out in the open seas. That was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And because of that, Lyndon Johnson twisted the arm of Congress and got the authorization to send 500,000 troops in, and the rest is history. Like the lie to try to get you decent American people to stop dragging your feet about going to war in Syria. Remember how that went? The British Parliament, when deliberating whether or not the British military should go into Syria with the no-fly zone and all that stuff, they put it to a vote, and apparently the British parliamentarians heard an awful lot back from their constituents to say, no, don't do this, and they voted not to do it. That apparently inspired Barack Obama, who was getting a lot of pressure put on him to push for a no-fly zone and actually implement one. And Barack Obama took a page from the British and said, you know what? We're going to have a vote in Congress. And the goodness of the American people came out. Congress was overwhelmed with letters and phone calls and emails against making another war in Syria, against implementing a no-fly zone in Syria. And it came from every direction. It came from liberals. It came from conservatives. It came from libertarians. It came from the north. And it came from the south, east and west. And that's the goodness of the American people. That's what is the problem for these folks, these warmongers. They need to overcome the goodness that we have. And fear is the age-old way of doing that. And lies are when you want your people to go after innocent people, you have to tell them lies. And that's been the modus operandi for quite some time. So that's what it is. The goodness of the American people, again, is why you've got this whole system of lies. Lies, 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 all the way around. And it's not just going to war. Who would vote for this horrible, terrible, lousy economic mess that we're in, junk pile that we're on? Who would vote for that? No, you have to be given lies by the politicians and the talking heads that, oh, no, NAFTA is going to be a good thing for us. Oh, yeah, really? The TTIP is going to be a good thing for us. The TTP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, that's going to be good. No, it's not worked out. It's been actually really, really good, really great for the 0.01%. They've got more money now than anyone's ever had. But the rest of us are doing really lousy, and it's because these deals are not good for the majority of the people. But they can't tell you that, so they have to lie. If you had an inkling of that, then your good nature would kick in and say, no, I'm sorry. We are a country. We are a community. My neighbor may be right or left, or Republican or Democrat, but you know what? He's still my neighbor, and she's still my neighbor. And we work together, and we depend on each other because it's a community. I can't always watch my kid. They're watching my kids. I'm watching their kids. I can't alone stand up to the oligarchs who want to strip this country bare as is being done. I need my neighbor to help. So that's what the lies are for. That's what the lies are all about. And that's what we see in this presidential campaign right now. Somebody like Trump is not telling as many of the lies or any of the lies. I can't tell if he's telling none of them, but he's certainly pulling no punches, and they can't handle the truth. They don't know how to handle it. It's crazy. And when I see George Will, this pompous guy who likes to make it look like he's so principled, and he's railing against Donald Trump for lying about the weapons of mass destruction, yes, George Will, they were a lie. All right? And if you didn't know that, then shame on you. You ought to apologize to the million-plus murdered, dead, innocent Iraqis who died from that lie, and the American families of the servicemen and women who died because of that lie, and the American people who supported that terrible action based on that lie. That's what you need to be doing, George. Apologize. You want to come on this show? Anywhere, anytime, I will debate you about whether or not the weapons of mass destruction was a lie or not. It was a lie. And just because you get a big fat 6-figure salary to buffalo the American people and make these lies look like they're true doesn't mean it wasn't a lie. Sorry about that, George. And I'm going to sleep very well at night. And when my time comes, I'm going to go from this world to the next with a very peaceful conscience. And unless you're totally unconscious, which you may be, because I don't know that anybody could be that stupid. So I'm not sure what your set is, but, we can debate that. 512-646-1984. We still got a good hour and 15 minutes left in the program. Give us a ring. What do you think? Are the lies starting to be broken finally?
Easy.
All right, good friends. The late, great Alvin Lee from Woodstock going home by helicopter. 512-646-1984. Give us a call. Kind of talking about different things tonight. I do not have a guest for you. I'm trying to get Joseph Farrell back on. Great interview last week. I hope you listened to it. It's in the archives. Really exciting stuff. I love having deep thinkers, philosophers on. I'm not asking for a crystal ball to see the future. I'm just asking for modeling to be done on what likely could be going on, and does it make sense? And Farrell was very, very good with that. A lot of things. I sent out an email to some friends this week. I'm using Windows 10 to do most of my business with these days. It's the latest version of Microsoft Windows. And there's a new feature on it now. A lot of it is relying on the network, okay? For instance, in the past, when Microsoft had updates or patches to update Windows, you could set it to automatically do the update, or set it to never automatically do the update, or set it to notify you that there was an update, and then you choose whether you want to do the update or not. Well, now you don't really get a choice. It just goes ahead and does it all for you, which is very, very inconvenient, because sometimes when you turn your system off, you have to wait a while those updates finish. And worse than that, sometimes when you turn your system back on, the updates continue to work. And when I do this show, when I turn my system on, I need to get on, okay? And if I can't wait sometimes 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes for updates to take place. So it's a terrible feature. But another feature in Windows 10 is that Microsoft put these pictures up on the screen for you before you log in. And if you've got your screen set to lock automatically after you've not used it for a given period of time, if you walk away, there'll be this picture that goes up there and you can log back in again. And it's mostly scenic photography, but they have different things. But Microsoft is, I'm sure, trying to do some data mining, because they want to know if you like the picture or not. And presumably, if you like the picture, they've got some kind of algorithm that will tailor the pictures that you see so that they look more like the picture that you said you liked. I'm wondering if they don't have an algorithm in there that seeks to determine your political persuasion, for instance, or your ability to think freely by the pictures that you select. I don't know. I bet that's got something to do with it, but that's just me. Anyway, let's see, it's about 3-4 days ago, I turned on my computer in the morning, and the screen, it used to be called a screensaver, but the picture that covered my screen from Microsoft was some kind of a snow scene. I don't know if it's a midnight sun or what, but there's pine trees covered in snow. There's this mountain in the background with snow. It looks kind of like strange weather, kind of like a midnight sun thing to me. But and there's these footprints in the snow. But, and I've never seen this before in commercial photography, the sky is crisscrossed with chemtrails. The sky is crisscrossed with chemtrails, and at least one, maybe two, one of them is very clear, is actually being created by a jet. It's a sharp new one, and it has a little jet at the top of it. There's old fat ones that the wind has fanned out, as you see them happening yourself. And it looks like there's another one in the background being created by a jet, but the sky is crisscrossed with these things. That's the first time I've ever seen chemtrails in commercial photography. That wasn't an article about chemtrails, maybe. And I find this to be highly, highly interesting, because, the discussion about chemtrails, chemtrails are real. Geoengineering is real. The patents to, protect the rights of the people who develop this stuff is real. But it's never acknowledged. It's never admitted. It's never talked about. And part of the cover is that, they're not chemtrails, they're contrails. Well, that does not appear to be true, because contrails only go for a couple miles behind an aircraft, and then they're ice crystals, right? That at the proper atmospheric conditions form in the air, and they weigh. Let's face it, and eventually they fall down, and they melt or something on the way down. That's contrails. Chemtrails go for miles and miles, and they don't go away. They fan out. They get wider. They spread out. You can see the wind blowing them. You can see ripples in them sometimes, or high altitude wind. They look scalloped sometimes. And that's what's here in this picture. And I've never seen it before commercially like this, but yet there they are. So I'm figuring, hey, Microsoft has this in front of millions of people. Maybe they're trying to normalize chemtrails and get people used to it. They're not contrails. And we can't seem to find experts that would be willing to come on and put their reputation on the line and say, no, these are contrails. But anything I have ever seen, they weren't. If contrails were like chemtrails, right? How many times have you seen film footage of strategic bombers during World War II flying along in formation, and they all have contrails coming off the engines, right? And you can see the skies white with them. But they don't last forever like chemtrails do. They are condensation. It's ice crystals, I believe, and it falls down. It becomes ice and falls down, and they go away. Otherwise, the Germans or your enemy, all they had to do was just follow the line for miles until they found you in the sky, So anyway, I wonder, why is Microsoft using this picture? And if you want it, give me an email, info@innradio.com. I'll be happy to send it to you. But why is Microsoft normalizing chemtrails? Why are they? I've never seen this before. And, one of the arguments about chemtrails is that No, it's not contrails. You don't see. Back to Ronald Reagan. We talked about Ronald Reagan, Death Valley days, the old-time movies when they filmed in Monument Valley and the Cowboys and Indians and all that, and you had these bright, clear blue skies. Does anybody ever, I'll challenge the audience, please call in. Can anybody remember ever seeing chemtrails in any Hollywood movie before, 1995 or whatever, when they first, I don't know. I don't remember seeing them. I don't remember seeing the Cowboys out west and having some jet flying overhead, leaving a streak across the sky. No. Well, that's going to change now, because if this is a trend and Microsoft and other people start normalizing chemtrails and include them in photography, advertising, maybe movies and stuff, now future generations are only going to know that these things have been around forever, apparently, right? I don't know. What do you think? 512-646-1984. Some more stuff. Shame on the people who say, the 28 pages is a sideshow. It doesn't mean anything. It's about the cover story. Yes, the 28 pages are about the cover story. It's about the financing of the cover story. Just because a lot of these people pushing the 28 pages in Congress don't know that doesn't mean it's not true, and doesn't mean that it's still valid. And here's a perfect example. I've said this, and now it's coming out in the news. All right? Honor among thieves. If you're going to get the Saudis in trouble, and they were forced to go along with part of the 9/11 attacks, the part to provide the patsies and to help them get around and keep them financed and everything, and you're going to throw them off the boat, right? Okay, you're no longer in the you're in the axis of evil now. You're no longer in with the good guys. We're going to talk about you as if you really had something to do with a real 9/11. Well, I said that's a good thing, because there's no honor among thieves. Okay? The Saudis, who I'm sure many higher-ups in the Saudi regime know what really happened, they could very easily say, hey, you want to throw us under the bus? You want to get rid of us? Well, we can start talking to. And that's what's going on now, it looks like. Okay, that's what's going on now. I just had this article sent to me yesterday. Saudi press accuses U.S. government of carrying out 9/11 attacks. There you go. Exactly what I said. You know what? Let them argue it out. Once you start this is like a mafia war. They all work together. Now, once you get on the outs, try to get rid of somebody, they can fight back. And you can have a war on the inside. Well, that's what it looks like. The Saudi press has been in a frenzy since the unanimous Senate vote to allow for the House of Saud to be held liable in U.S. federal court for the 9/11 attacks. So now they're saying, your government did it, not us. Which is true. I don't see how the Saudis could have done anything about 9/11. Yeah, maybe they provided the patsies. Okay, fine. But that's a far cry from controlling the Air Force that day that didn't show up. And the media that day that, covered the event and didn't cover it as a demolition, and still refuses for the most part to cover it as a demolition. Doesn't take any of that into account, does it? No, so let's see. Here we go. The Saudis are complaining. Now the American government knows about 9/11 and what happened because it did it. So here you go already. So there's a value right there in getting the 28 pages out. I saw my own Congresswoman's representative with our good friend Les Jameson, who was on the show, who's been on the show many times. As a matter of fact, I should get Les on to, maybe I'll call him during the break, get Les on to talk about this, that the Saudis are now saying the American government did it. And we made a very good case. We persuaded our congressional representative's man in the hood in Brooklyn, where we both live. We shared the same congressperson, Nydia Velasquez. He had a bagel and coffee with us in a bagel shop. Of course, Les, very eloquent on the subject. We made a great case, and he said he's going to bring this to Nydia Velasquez, our congresswoman. We said, look, you had so many members of your district died that day. Okay? You owe it to us. And she's sponsoring the bill to declassify the 28 pages. Good. So I'm all for it. No, I don't think it's going to be a distraction, and this is exactly what I was hoping would happen. That it's going to start causing tension on the inner group who was in on doing it. And the Saudis don't like the idea that they're being singled out and they're being thrown under the bus. And now they're talking about the U.S. government did this, and people should realize. Smart people around the world do realize that. So what does this mean? Are they going to get rid of the Saudis? Is that why else would they come out with this if they didn't want to get rid of the Saudis? Don't forget, they got a new king over there since about a little over a year now. Maybe we don't like that guy. We want to get rid of him. Tom Kiley, INN, right back after this. All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. let's see, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on the Great Logos Radio Network. Now, I'm listening to the news report, and this latest hot button wedge issue is, really upon us right now, the whole transgender agenda. And I asked Dr. Tarpley about this at the Left Forum because he spoke about wedge issues being used by the Republicans and the conservatives, to divide the country and to alienate people and make certain voters feel that the Republican Party was listening to them and was going to support them, even though that never happens, with abortion, for instance. They want to make that group of people who are anti-abortion feel like their party, the Republican Party, understands it and supports it, but they don't ever get anything done about it. And so I said to him, well, that's not true, is it? Because the transgender issue is being used as a wedge issue, but it's not the Republicans who are raising it. And he ducked the question. He basically was talking about the Republicans' response to it, but, he didn't address the fact that it wasn't the Republicans who raised it. This is the Soros Open Society people. This is the liberals who are raising this thing. And it's a shame. He kind of ducked the question. But and I know they're monitoring this. The people at the Tax Wall Street Party. Maybe Dr. Tarpley can come on and elucidate. But monitoring this program, apparently. At least I was told that over the weekend. But let's talk about that. 512-646-1984. You've heard me talk about it. Listen, I'm a progressive from New York. I mean, no question about it. But I don't get this gender agenda. It's one of the things you have to watch how you say it. Transgender agenda. I think I get it, but I don't get it for its stated reasons. Its stated reasons seem to be that people who are suffering from feeling alienated by their own body's sex wish to do something, although nothing can ultimately be done, to ameliorate that suffering that they have by pretending to be of the opposite sex. And by making that pretense or that pretending so good, so convincing that other people don't realize that they are in fact of the opposite sex. And apparently this will make a lot of people who suffer from this terrible anxiety about themselves, or whatever you want to call it, make them feel better. But it is, and I'm told by a doctor who listens to the program that these people are really convinced that they're in the wrong body and everything, and they want to alter themselves to the point where they can pass in the public's eye. And they're not interested usually in doing any more than they need to be able to pass. And passing, apparently in this context, means that if you're walking down the street, somebody sees you, they will, based on your appearance and the way you conduct yourself, make the assumption that you are of the opposite sex. So if you're a male who wants to pass as a female, you will, through clothing, makeup perhaps, manipulation of clothing, but then apparently through other means of manipulation, such as surgery and or hormonal therapies and so forth, plus your conduct, all of it put together means walking down the street, most people wouldn't think twice and assume that instead of a male, they're looking at a female, called passing. And that's the goal, to pass. And that oftentimes, according to this doctor, they don't do more than they need to achieve that. But passing is basically manipulating people, isn't it? I mean, isn't it trying to convince somebody that something that is not? And that's the way it has gone for a long time. Now, this mindset that has set in the country, which is if somebody feels bad about anything, then, and especially if they are mistreated because of this thing that they feel, then the best way to deal with it is to change the whole society to go along with what it is that they want, that they're feeling so bad about. In other words, it's not just a case anymore of individuals doing things to pass, to look like they're of the opposite sex. It's a situation where legally now the rest of society is being bound to go along with that passing, to go along with that untruth. And it's gone to the point now where we're throwing out the window, cultural standards that we've had for a very, very long time. And because if you have to go to the restroom or the bathroom of your true actual sex, it will ruin the attempt at passing. Because people will see that, oh, you must be fooling me because you're going to the men's room but you look like a woman, or vice versa. So the solution is to get everybody to go along with this and to support the untruth. It seems like a pretty drastic solution, and it seems like, instead of helping someone feel better about themselves, the way they are, the way they were born, it's getting the whole world to go along with with the deception, the self-deception. The Romans had an expression. It's a lot easier to cover the bottom of your foot with leather than it is to cover the whole globe with leather. The net effect is the same. Your foot is protected as you walk, but try to cover the whole world with leather. Isn't it better to just put a little piece of it on the bottom of your foot? That's what it looks like we're trying to do here, to solve the problem of these unfortunate people who have this terrible situation. And if there was anything, if I could wave a magic wand and they didn't have to feel that way, I'd certainly do it. They certainly do not deserve to be persecuted or punished or anything for it, right? That's what I'm all for. But to try to cover the whole world with leather and try to get the whole world to go along with this thing is not right. I don't see where that makes any sense. But, the people pushing this are very, very powerful, and they want you to feel like you're the one that's got the problem if you don't agree with going along. I think John's ready. Let's go. Hi, John, are you there?
Hey, Tom.
Making any sense here tonight, or is it all convoluted?
No, I'm in total agreement with you, man. She would know this stuff started hitting in the headlines in the 1980s in London. All this gay pride stuff, it was all over the place, and at first it was so overwhelming, it really used to tick me off. But over the years, I became more and more tolerant of it. I thought, fine, if some guy wants to park his pudding up some other guy's back door, just why do I have to hear about it every damn day? Just get on with your business, I was a middle-aged Scotsman who wasn't getting as much nookie as I was when I was a younger man, but I'm not gathering people in London to go on a bloody parade demanding more nookie for sex-starved bloody Scotsmen, am I?
Well, I mean, look, here in New York, they've got the Gay Pride Parade every year. It's quite a sight to see. I used to stop cabs. I used to drive a cab, and I tell you see some pretty unusual things going on there. And if people have pride, I suppose people want to have pride. They have the Italian Pride Parade and the Jewish Pride Parade, and the Caribbean Pride Parade, I guess, and all this stuff. But when it comes to things like that, I mean, sexuality, the majority of the population has a certain way of doing it. It's kind of the majority of nature seems to have a certain way of doing it. So if a minority in the population wants to do it otherwise, and in the past they were persecuted for that, I'm sorry for that. I don't agree with persecuted people. But, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. But this is different to me than gay pride, John. This is your kids in the bathroom and me in the bathroom. You know what I mean? And more importantly, it's spreading this kind of problem around and making it greater because, I'm told gender confusion is something that children have experienced, but many of them just outgrow it. And some of them need some therapy to outgrow it. And many gay people, I think almost all gay people at one point I read, remember going through gender confusion, but not all people who went through gender confusion end up being gay. Well, now we're celebrating gender confusion. We're saying, no, don't try to get over it. Go with it. And if that's the solution and more and more, and it becomes fine to encourage people to go with it, then what it means is that more and more young people who don't necessarily have it, but who see it going on may begin to wonder, well, if it truly is up to me to choose, which that's what this is all about. It's not the chromosomes. It's not your body. It's not the sperm and egg that chose. Because, sperms have either a male chromosome in them or a Y male chromosome in them. It's not that. That's the ultimate choice. But if you want to try to say, no, I don't want to go along with that choice. I want to have my own choice and ignore all of that. It seems to me you're asking for trouble if you're trying to promote that, especially with children who don't suffer from this and they think that it's a perfectly fine thing to do. Does that make any sense?
Well, yeah. But just why is this such a proliferation of this nowadays? I mean, years ago, I can remember, grew up, I never knew anybody who was homosexual. I never met my first homosexual guy until I was like about 25 years old, and I was in an amateur operatic society, and we're turning up for a show one night, and we're having a beer in the bar before going across the road to the theatre, and all the guys are talking, they say, Mike's announced that he's homosexual. And I thought, wow. So I'd finished my beer, and I went over to the theatre, I got up to the dressing room, and there he was. And I'll tell you what, Tom, I felt bloody queer. Oh, no, that's the wrong word to use. I felt strange. It was, when you've never met anyone who's like that.
Well, I disagree, John. I think you probably met plenty of people who were like that. Back in those days, people were like that, but they just were not open about it. And now people... You know what I mean? That you knew people, but you just didn't know that you knew people, and they were, concealing the way they felt. And in that sense, I'm all for gay pride. People shouldn't have to feel, we should be beyond the point of people needing to be closeted because they'd lose their job or because they'd get beaten up. I hope we've evolved beyond that as a society. And typically when people first get the freedom to express themselves, they may overdo it a bit. Hold on, we'll be right back just after this.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Welcome back. Tom Kiley, World Report Radio. We're speaking with John on the line. You can be next, 512-646-1984. And the subject is turned to the transgender agenda. So, John, are you still there?
No, John had to leave the room. This is his friend Hillary speaking.
Yeah, I mean, do you get my point? I'm sure you knew people who were gay. You just didn't know they were gay because back before a certain date, most gay people, only if they even came out at all to each other, they only were comfortable among other gay people.
Well, I think I can honestly tell you, Tom, I don't think I ever met one until I lived in England. I certainly don't recall ever meeting any in Scotland or Northern Ireland. But,
or if you did, then you just didn't know it.
Probably wouldn't, because how the hell would I identify anybody like that back then?
Yeah, well, somebody who's also doing their best to make sure that you didn't know it, and perhaps with good reason, because maybe they thought you might beat them up or something if you found out, but... So I take issue. I'm sure that you knew gay people before you knew that you knew gay people. But other than that, I mean, this is still different. I mean, most gay people, I think, are comfortable with their own sex. They just want to have sex with the same sex. This is different. This is people who are not comfortable with their own sex. And, this is a really interesting thing. I mean, most people sort of conflate gay people with transgender people. And I don't know if that's fair or accurate, but it certainly looks like the proclivity would be to be having sex with the same sex that you are, but by making believe you're not the same sex that you are. Is there any such thing as the other way around? Does anybody, go through the transgender process? Does a guy ever go through the transgender process and remain heterosexual? In other words, can a guy become female in order to become a lesbian? Does anybody know about that?
I sometimes refer to myself as a lesbian.
Well, I can understand what the attraction is to that myself. Yes, but I have a joke that I made. Remember that? Who was that? Who's the performer, the musician, the woman who sings? Who's openly gay, and she has all this music. She's like a screamer. I want to come over. Who's the woman who sings that song?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. But anyway, she's famous. And
I love her. I'm a big fan of hers.
Yeah, okay. And what was the other one? Does She Love You Like I Do? Remember she had that song too. Does She Love You Like I Do, right?
Oh, but no, you've got me stumped there, mate.
Who did this song? I want to come over. Oh, man. She's big rock and roll woman, rock and roll star, but openly gay. Oh. And I was like, I made some shtick about it when I was younger. Yeah, okay, you see, that testosterone poison is pretty bad stuff, isn't it? 5 o'clock in the morning, I want to come over.
Let me tell you about one year here in Austin. During they have what they call the Rock Rally, the Republic of Texas Rally, where all the bikers come to town. All the Harley riders. And my best buddy at the time, he rented a Harley for the day, and I think he went scoping around to see if he could find himself a woman for the day. And he didn't, and he ended up at my place. He says, come on, well, let's go downtown. I says, aye, all right. So I jump in the back of the bike and go downtown. And we're sitting at a junction there. And there happened to be, at that particular year, there happened to be a gay pride rally on the very same, it was on a Saturday of the rock rally weekend. And here's these bunch of rednecks standing in the corner, and I hear one of them say, oh, look, we're a pair of faggots. So I got off the back of the bike and I walked over to this guy and I says, where are you from, pal? And I think he said, I'm from Lubbock in Texas. And I says, well, what does a woman from Lubbock say after she's had the best night's sex of her life? And he says, I don't know. I says, no, I didn't think you would somehow.
That's funny. Melissa Etheridge, by the way, is the singer I was thinking of.
Sorry, who?
Melissa Etheridge.
Oh, yeah.
And she screams this stuff, and I want to come over. And I thought a clever comedian could make some shtick out of that. I said, oh, yeah, okay. You want to be a guy so bad, welcome to the club. What do you think we go through? This is called testosterone poisoning, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was thinking about becoming a lesbian, but, if that's what it's like, forget about it, but anyway, that's some shtick there. Yeah, I like Ron White, the comedian from Texas. You ever hear his story about being thrown out of a bar and into public in New York City? You ever hear that story?
Yeah, I think I did hear him tell that, yeah.
It's very funny. He said that he was, after a gig in New York City, he went to a bar and to have some drinks, and he was wearing a 10-gallon hat or something. And he said the bouncer at the door yelled at him, hey, you got to take that hat off before you can come in here. And he said, well, how come? And he said the bouncer told him, because there's a lot of gays in this neighborhood, and if you wear a hat like that in this club, they'll all want to come here. and Ron White says, well, that's funny. You know how we can tell them in Texas? And he said, the bouncer says, no, how? He says, well, they kind of got a haircut like yours. He's funny. And then he goes on to tell that story that he went into the bar, he had a few drinks, and then he got comfortable. He put his hat back on, and then they threw him out, and into the street. And he decided to go along with them. He says, because I don't know how many of them it would have taken to kick my butt, but I saw how many they were planning on using. And then he got outside, and they yelled at him, and the cops came, and the cops wanted to arrest him for being drunk in public. And he says, arrest them. They threw me into public. I want to be drunk in a bar like everybody.
Yeah.
That's Ron White. Anyway, yeah, funny guy, Texas. Like that. Yeah, anyway, but back to what I'm saying. I mean, really, you don't get more liberal than I am, but I'm a real liberal. I'm not for these wars and so forth, like the pro-war, the phony baloney liberals. And I'm sorry. I think that you said you don't understand it. I think it's got something to do with the eugenics agenda. Look, it is elites of society that enforce, at least, if not make, the decisions on what the norms are going to be, right? It's the church leaders or the king or the government or what have you. But the little guy doesn't get to say whether or not homosexuality should be embraced in public or not. It's the elites that decide that. And the elites that had decided for many, many centuries, back in the classical world, it was different. In the ancient world, the homosexuality was much more open, apparently. But when classical society gave way to Western civilization, as we call it, for some reason, that became different. And that's the way we've been. Now it's changing again. But it's not the little guy who makes the change. So elites are making these changes. Elites are at least allowing them to go forward. And in my opinion, those same elites are also in favor of depopulating the world. And I think that promoting any kind of lifestyle that doesn't lead to procreation of humans and promoting any kind of confusion about identity and sexuality is part of it. I think abortion is part of it as well. That's why there's such widespread acceptance of abortion now, that they get behind that. And I think also the assault on the family, making parents work so hard that they can't raise their children, they can't watch their kids and so forth, and there's so many divorces because of money and stuff like that. I think it's all part of it. Does that make any sense?
Oh, as much sense as it could, Tom, because it's something I don't dwell on it because I'm just sick of hearing about it. I'm not interested in their business, so just leave me alone with it. There's one thing I'm noticing though. I'm seeing more and more a push for they want to legalize pedophilia, and that bloody worries me. Well, it didn't worry me; it angers me. People who want to interfere with children, that's a no-no in my book.
Well, that's another thing that was more accepted in the classic civilization with the Greeks, especially.
So, yes.
Yeah, and that's another distinction between classical civilization and Western civilization that I think, again, elites are challenging and trying to change. I mean, I think it means that they're trying to create a new civilization. They're trying to move on now from Western civilization to something different where they can control people a lot more. Hold on, John, because we've got to take a break.
Yo.
512-646-1984 is the number. You can give us a ring. We'd love to hear from you and chime in on this or any other subject you'd like.
Everyone knows that walking is great exercise, but you might not know that the way you walk could predict how long you're going to live. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back to tell you more about walking prognostication in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
New research shows how fast you walk could predict how long you're going to live. The Journal of the American Medical Association reports that older adults who walk 1 meter per second or faster live longer than expected. In case you're wondering, 1 meter per second is about 2.25 miles per hour. A senior's age, gender, and walking speed were as good at predicting life expectancy as more traditional statistical measures. Generally speaking, faster walkers live longer. Measuring walking speed is quick and inexpensive. It only takes a stopwatch, some space to walk, and a few minutes. Researchers say it could help doctors identify older patients who need special care. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Chemtrails.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Welcome back. You can give us a ring, 512-646-1984. Phone lines are open here for the rest of the show, all evening, in fact. And the only person who's called so far is John. And I'm certainly glad he did. John, are you there?
Oh, Tom, I'm always here for you, dear. You know that.
Well, how about that? Listen, and you're always into music. I know that, too. Speaking of which...
I just remembered the joke I was trying to tell you a couple of minutes ago.
Oh, yeah.
What do you call 100 lesbians with AK-47s?
Oh, man, I don't know.
Militia Etheridge.
Speaking of which, by the way, you know, I've said it on this program. I'd love to get the people who put this together. But, you know, the Michigan Women's Festival, and they spelled it WOYMINS, I think, or something like that, for 40 years was kind of like the female/lesbian Woodstock, right? It happened every year up in the woods of Michigan somewhere. And it was all women, only women. And, you know, music and crafts and spirituality and yoga and all kinds of stuff, right? And I know straight women who used to go to this and just said it was really wonderful to just be around all this female energy for a week or so. She said that you could walk around topless and get sun and nobody would bother you, you know, like if there was guys around, you couldn't do that. And they come to tell me that the show, the festival has ended. Last year was its last year after 40 years. And it's because of the transgender agenda that this is a festival for real biological women. And they didn't even let male babies come if a woman had children, you know, supposedly. And now, because of this transgender agenda, where they're trying to push everybody to accept that males can be females and females can be males, they rather than go through that anymore and that fight and that argument and being called transphobic, they said, you know what? We're done. It's finished. This is for women, and I'm sorry, a trans female is not really a female. And this festival, this lesbian celebration of female energy it means what it says, and it says what it means. And we're going to, rather than change it and accept males who are trying to pass as females, we're just going to end the festival. How about that story?
Huh. That's Robert De Niro said in Heat. What do you got to do?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it?
Well, listen. Let me tell you something right quick here in case somebody else calls in. Tom, I'm having health issues at the moment, mate. I actually just got back home from the hospital there. 45 minutes ago. I went to the emergency room about 3 weeks ago, and they did some tests on me. and they diagnosed me with having walking pneumonia.
Oh, boy.
And yesterday morning, I was just walking across the street to work. I just walked across the street and I was walking down to work, and when I got there, I felt like crap, and I just sat there for 30 minutes just trying to get myself together.
Oh, boy.
And then I turned around and I said, look, I need to go back to the emergency room because I don't have a doctor's appointment for 3 weeks, and this doesn't feel good. So I went back to the emergency room, and they kept me in overnight. And, man, they did some tests on me today. Have you ever heard of a stress test?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, it was nasty.
They put you on a treadmill or something?
At about 5 o'clock today, this nurse finally come walking in the room and says, oh, you're fine, you can go home. Huh. She says, really? I feel like crap. I can hardly breathe. My blood pressure's like over 200, and I'm fine.
Wow.
So, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's...
What's walking pneumonia? Have they educated you about it at all?
No, they didn't explain what it was.
Well, I'm not a doctor, and I'm certainly not trying to diagnose you or prescribe anything for you. However, I do know that if you've got pneumonia, in my knowledge, has something to do with the lungs usually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can recommend a nutritional supplement that's good for your lungs that you might want to look at taking. And it's certainly not meant as a diagnosis or a prescription or not going to a doctor. By all means, do that too. But the nutritional supplement N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, as it's more commonly known, and you can get it in the health food store, is very good for the lining in your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And I can recommend, I've taken it for years, N-acetylcysteine. Very, very good to help regenerate the lining in your lungs. And I could recommend, go down to the vitamin shop or a health food store and ask them about NAC. Get a small bottle and try it out, see what you think.
Yeah. What is it, a tincture?
No, I don't know if they make it in a liquid form, but I always take it in capsules.
So, but if I Google NAC, it'll come up, yeah?
Keep talking. I'll Google for you. Say something, sing to the crowd, something, and I'll let you know. But N-acetylcysteine, NAC, let's see. Let's see what it comes up with. Yep. It's, I just used start page, and it's N-ACTEYL space cysteine, the overlooked compound that saves lives.
Hang on, give me that again, Tom. NAC.
Just Google NAC.
Yeah.
And it comes up for me in start page.
All right. There you go.
And it's very, very good for your lungs. And if you're going to take it, I also recommend that you take it alongside of a very powerful antioxidant called alpha-lipoic acid. That's very good to take both of them at the same time. Because when you do that, it stimulates the production of a very powerful enzyme or hormone called, I think it's a hormone, called glutathione, which is very, very good for you. So I take the both of them.
Glutathione, yeah.
Yeah, glutathione is your body. It's hard to take supplements of glutathione. You need to stimulate your body to make it. And one of the things, when you take N-acetylcysteine and alpha-lipoic acid at the same time, it stimulates the body's production of glutathione. And you want to hear something interesting?
Go on.
A vegetable that stimulates the body's production of glutathione, among several, is asparagus. Right? Asparagus. Now, you know that if you eat asparagus, it tends to give your urine a certain distinctive odor. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? When you take nutritional supplements of N-acetylcysteine and alpha-lipoic acid at the same time, it does the same thing. It smells like you've been eating asparagus. Isn't that interesting? And both of them stimulate the production of glutathione.
Well, that tells me that they're cleaning you out.
Maybe, but it's very, very powerful. Alpha-lipoic acid is a great antioxidant. I've actually experienced, I used to be subject to pollen allergies a lot when I was younger, and I've pretty much gotten over it. I when I first started getting over it was from drinking greens drinks and stuff, and then lemon, but a lot of vitamin C and alpha-lipoic acid used to actually clear my nose sometimes too. So it's a very good antioxidant. But definitely, please, if you got anything with your lungs, take a look into N-acetylcysteine, and if you're going to take it, you might as well take it with the alpha-lipoic acid as well.
Yeah, I'll go to the natural grocers tomorrow and get some of that.
There you go, and just get a small amount at first, and it's not that expensive. Yeah. And try some alpha-lipoic acid. Take them both at once, and you tell me if it makes you feel like you've been eating asparagus. And they're both supposed to stimulate glutathione production, which is very important for you.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I actually ate asparagus for the first time today in the hospital. I was able to order some food after they did those tests. So I ordered up some salmon and rice with asparagus, and I actually quite enjoyed it.
You never had asparagus before?
No, I've never eaten asparagus before.
Oh, man, they're very, very good for you. And they're actually quite tasty. Get yourself a batch of them in the grocer, and you got to cut off the bottom 2 to 4 inches of them, because they're woody stems. But then take them tips, take them and steam them. Just put them in your steamer for a few minutes. They get bright green, and then just put a little butter, salt, and pepper on them. They're absolutely delicious, and they're very, very good for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very easy to make. Delicious, good for you, nutritious. Hold on, we'll be right back. 512-646-1984.
Increase in mental functioning.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Last segment of the show here. We've got new bumpers for you coming up soon. I sent them off to Deborah already. She's got to process them, but boy, what a powerful song that was. We're speaking with listener Scottish John in Austin. You can be next, 512-646-1984. Hey, John.
Yes, sir. I
wanted to speak with you about music, and, funnily enough, if there is such a word, I've heard it used, but that last bit there, did you hear that, When the Levee Breaks from Led Zeppelin?
Oh, yeah, I love that.
What a song, huh?
And I wanted to talk to you about music as well, funnily enough.
Well, good. Let's talk about music. I brought it up first, so I get the floor here for a moment. But first of all, before we go on, what a song. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I love music, and I know a lot about music, and I consider myself a bit of an aficionado with certain types of music, and I try to pick out the best of the best, for this show. By the way, what do you think of the different types of music and the examples that we use for the bumpers on this show?
I love them, mate. In fact, I said to you a while back, I asked you if you would send me a list so as I could check them all out on YouTube, because some of them I wasn't familiar with, All
right, I will actually do that. You know what I've been putting it off for years. Maybe I'll do it. I was thinking about making a webpage dedicated to every song that we've ever used here and give you all a 30-second clip of it and maybe a picture of the album and a little information about the group and the song so you could go ahead and get it if you like, So maybe I will do that. I can give you a list of them, and I will. But I've got a whole new raft of bumpers that I sent to Deborah, and there's some good stuff in there. And I mean, it's all good, I think, but I try to make it an assortment now. So I've got, I got some good picking music in there, and but there's a performer who I had never heard of before, and until I traveled to Thailand back in 1993. And I was staying in this nice hotel, Holiday Inn. I was there for 3 weeks. And, when you travel around internationally, they got the different versions of CNN and BBC and, they have the international versions. Well, MTV has an Asian version too, apparently. I guess you would know all about that, having traveled so much in Asia, right? So for the first time, I'm watching Asian MTV, and it was, same format, but different music. Well, they had this guy on, a rapper, who was Indian, as an Indian extraction from India, and Jamaican, and he was fantastic, and it was really fun, and he had a really incredible sense of humor, and he called himself Apache Indian. Apache Indian, and he had this really amazing song called Arranged Marriage. And here's this guy speaking in Jamaican, cadence with a Jamaican accent, all about being an Indian guy who's having a hard time finding a good Indian girl to get married to, and his parents are going to make an arranged marriage. And it was called Arranged Marriage. It wasn't called Arranged Marriage. It was called Arranged Marriage. And the chorus was "Me Want Girl." And someone who's going to love me and make me roti. Me want girl. It was really a very humorous and well put together song. Well, I just looked the guy up again, seeing if he had anything, because I was considering actually using that song in the bumpers this time. And I found a few years ago, he's still around. Apparently he's from England, and he's of Jamaican and Indian descent, and he's in England, and he was big in the ska scene over there or something. And a few years back, he did a remake of the Desmond Decker hit the Israelites. Remember that song?
Oh, yeah. It's up in the morning, slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed.
Poor Israelites, right? My family want to pick up and leave, all this stuff. Oh, my goodness. Well, he made a remake of that song. First of all, it's updated, and it's very, very slickly produced, but it's with this Indian reggae style of his. And he has actually Desmond Decker singing with him on it, too. Oh, man, what a great, great version. I got that in the new bumpers. That's coming.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't know if I can send you a link to it or something, but oh, man, was it? It's on YouTube. After the show, I'll send you a link to it. Oh, man, does he do a great job. And he does this sort of Jamaican hip-hop, attitude in there, too. But, they do a great. And Desmond Decker's voice sounds beautiful. The harmonies in it and everything. And so we got that coming up. Who else here? You keep talking a second. I'll tell you a little bit more about what's coming into bumpers because I think you might know some of these people. I think this one guy might be from Austin, actually. Let's see here. Say something, John. Well, you talk about what you were going to say about music-wise while I'm looking this up for you.
I stumbled on Aretha Franklin, Nessun Dorma.
Well, how did she feel about it when you stumbled on her?
Hey?
How did she feel about it when you stumbled on her? Oh, never mind. That was a stumbling joke there.
I don't know. I'll email her and I'll tell her I lost her old email and ask her to resend it. Apparently, Pavarotti was going to be there and he pulled out due to illness 20 minutes before the show started. Mr. Franklin volunteered to do that song. Oh, man, she blew it out of the park.
Wow. Let's see here. With the BBC. Hung It Up. It was a song called Hung It Up. Who's the guy who sings that? Dag on it. Junior Brown.
Junior Brown, yeah.
Yeah, some good picking. And, apparently his wife is on stage with him playing acoustic, too. She looks like a nice woman, and it's so nice to see a couple like that. But
yeah,
I got some here's a little teaser. Back when I first got out of the Army in 76, Bob Dylan had that album. What was it, Planet Waves or something? And it's not that album. But do you remember the song he did called ISIS?
No.
Well, because of ISIS being in the news, I'm using my first Bob Dylan song is going to be ISIS. And it's really funny. ISIS, oh ISIS, you're a mystical child. What drives me to you drives me insane. So we got ISIS from Bob Dylan coming up. I got Bad Company. Remember their song Deal with the Preacher?
No, that one went past me.
Oh, man, great guitar playing by, what was the guitar player? That guitar player was, wasn't he one of the guys from Mott the Hoople or something?
Possibly. I don't remember his name either. It wasn't Mick Ronson, was it?
No.
No, I don't remember.
I got Manu Dibango with Sol Makusa, where Michael Jackson stole the line, Mama Su, Mama Sa, Mama Makusa. Right? That's Sol Makusa. Man, I used to tear the dance floor up with that one. REO Speedwagon, Roll with the Changes, kind of Midwestern gospel rock and roll area. And a few other things. But, we got some new bumpers coming up. Also, Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring is in there. So I got a couple of, I got at least one of the Euphoric Trance songs. I like that Euphoric Trance stuff. And a couple other things. So how about that?
Cool.
Coming up.
I'm working on a parody of that Johnny Cash cover, The Man Comes Around. Do you know that song? I don't know who did it originally, but you know the Johnny Cash cover of that song?
No.
Man, you don't know that one? Oh, well.
No.
I was going to do a parody of that about Donald Trump. There's a man going round making claims. They're going to make America great again.
That was on his last album, right?
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the guitar player, Mick Ralphs. That's what I'm thinking about. Mick
Ralphs, there you go, yeah.
Mick Ralphs. Didn't he play in Mott the Hoople?
I think so.
Yes, Mott the Hoople.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, their first album was really, really good. Do you remember their first album?
Yeah. I loved that band, yeah, when they came out. Ian Hunter.
Yeah. And, they kind of dropped off, but their first album was astounding. They did a really powerful instrumental cover of the Kinks. It really got me on that album. And And then they have a beautiful song called Half Moon Bay. It sounds like an ode to Bob Dylan, actually. So yeah, Mick Ralphs is the guitar player. That's the rocking song that the song that I got on here, Deal with the Preacher. Oh man, it's a powerful guitar hook on that. And then I got a song by this amazing group that from the 70s that didn't go very far, only a couple of albums, but called Captain Beyond. And oh my goodness, were they something? And they had a couple of names in there too. I think they had a guy who used to sing for Deep Purple in there. And
all right, Deep Purple.
Yeah, I think I've had a Deep Purple song in the rotation in the past. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. Here we are. And the members, past members. Rod Evans, didn't he sing for Deep Purple for a while?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And remember? Yeah. Bobby Caldwell was a drummer, really, really good. Anyway, hopefully those will get into the rotation. You know, Deborah has to take these songs and sort of re-EQ them and so forth. But it's been a really long time that we've had this raft of bumpers. We got new ones coming. I had a bunch of Simple Minds songs in the mix. That's from Scotland, right?
Yeah, Jimmy Kerr.
Jimmy Kerr. We used to be married to what's her name from the Pretenders?
Yeah, Patty Hines, was it?
Yeah, Chrissie Hynde.
Chrissie Hynde.
Yeah, from the Pretenders. Anyway, that wraps it up, John. I'm going to send you this song tonight, and I want to hear what you think. Anyhow, Tom, Kylie, INN. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.